I hope everyone is having a good day. So, we got a good bit to cover with this topic, and I am going to be respectful as much as humanly possible as I have tried to do over all the Zooms we have had. Again, these are all recorded, so you can watch these on our Highland Trust Partners YouTube channel. But again, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. If I can get this done in 30 minutes, it is awesome. So, I this is something we get a lot of questions on. It's when should I file for Social Security? As you can well imagine, we're not going to cover things today like is any how safe is Social Security going forward? Is the trust fund going to run dry in the mid 2030s? So I mean, those are topics we can cover maybe another time. We're basically going to go through what's the best possible time that an individual couple should look at filing for Social Security and why, and talk about how we run analysis for that for clients and so forth and so on. So we will move forward with this. The presentation, if you would like, it's kind of it's a very, very thorough presentation. If you do want a copy, I'm happy to send it to you. Don't have a problem doing that. Again, housekeeping, chat room is closed, so don't chat or try to send a question via chat. If you do have a question over this, which I have a feeling we may have several, please contact us, anybody on my team, not just me. So any of us at Highland Trust Partners and ask the question, I'll have at the end of this a slide that kind of goes over some questions you may want to ask. And we'll do our best to get this answered for you. But let's get started with the slide that says key points to remember. So we're going to go here first. Okay. So I changed the order of these a little bit last night just so we can keep in a good pace. So I think everybody knows this. If the sooner you start before full retirement date, which is an FRA acronym, so the sooner you start Social Security, the less you're going to get in the benefit. All right. So you do get penalized, call it a penalty, if you begin earlier. What people tend to forget, it stays lower for life. And I'll talk about that a little bit, even in widow benefit, spousal benefit in a couple of seconds. But once you begin, you're locking in that time period. So it's not like all of a sudden you can restart this some other time and catch up on things that have been, or what we would call maybe a penalty, that you can reclaim that. Once you begin, you're on the clock. So we'll go over that a little bit deeper too. One thing to think about, and I think everybody kind of knows this, is there is a cost of living adjustment in Social Security. So the longer that you delay your benefit, the better off you are. But also, you do get an adjustment to your benefit on an ongoing basis, depending on what the government decides is a good cost of living adjustment, kind of an inflation rider, if you will, is 2.5%. I believe the last time they put this together, or they adjusted. So it's a pretty good COLA, and they'll look at that based on inflation numbers to decide how much extra that they would pay into the system. We will talk about, again, survivor benefits a little bit deeper. And one thing we want to go into, or when I have a conversation, people say, when should I start? There really isn't a cookie. There's not a cookie cutter answer. There are some rules of thumb that some people can live by if they don't want to do a full analysis on such. But we want to talk about your health status, your life expectancy, how much income you're going to be earning in the Social Security years, particularly the early Social Security years. Are you still going to work through your early 60s, mid 60s, or income coming into the household? How's that going to impact your benefit? Income does. If you earned a certain amount of income, they're going to the Social Security Administration is not going to pay you Social Security benefits right now. They're going to basically hold back for you. So, and then taxes. Social Security can be quote unquote taxable depending on how much other income you have coming into the household. So there's a lot of variables into this, and I think as we go through these slides, you'll see what we're talking about when I say it's not a cookie cutter answer. So we're going to look at 67 as the full retirement age, or FRA. There, of course, if you're under a certain, pretty much everybody who, when they adjust the Social Security age from 65 to 67 is full retirement. Some people are grandfathered in depending on the birth dates to 65 and so many months, 66 and so forth. So we're going to stick with 67. We're at this point, most people who have not filed yet are getting close to eligibility. They're 67 age or full retirement age. So If you file before full retirement at 67, you get I called it a penalty a minute ago. So you're going to get less. And this is how that formula works. So if you're 62 and file at 62, you're going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. Many of you already know that. I just want to point that out because some people forget. What they do forget also is that every year you wait, you can still file at 64. And if you file at 64, it's 80%. So every year you wait until 67, you still get a bump up or a higher percentage of your total benefit until you get to that full retirement age. And then when you reach your 67th birthday, okay, you get 100%. So you can file for full retirement at 67. That's 100% of your PIA. And then you will get an 8% bump every year after that. So I hear a lot of conversations with, oops, sorry, I moved that for you. I hear a lot of conversations that people say, I file at 62 or 67 or 70. You can do any of the numbers in between. You can file at any of those dates, and there's a different number for those dates that you filed. A percentage lower, percentage higher. So just keep that in mind. We want to have that conversation with as many people as possible when we analyze this for them. The one thing I do always point out, some people say this, I don't need the money at 67, so I'm going to take it and I'm going to just park it in the bank in a checking account. You get an 8% guaranteed return on your money by waiting. So unless you're getting an 8% on your checking account or your CD at the bank, if that's really where you're going to stash the money and not use it, I would 100% say you want to hold off a little bit before you take your benefit. But that's a conversation to be had with you and your spouse. Again, there's a lot of variables in this, not just if you need the money or don't need the money. It could be your life expectancy, your family conditions, your current health that cause you to adjust as you need to. I would 100% want to talk with someone. We do that for our clients. So I would think you ought to talk to someone before you make the ultimate decision. And I do always say, or you'll hear us say that we don't know the right answer. We can run every scenario under the sun to figure out what option to take, but we don't really know the right answer until you and your spouse have passed away. I mean, if we knew exactly when your life expectancy date was, we could 100% give you the best answer, but we don't know that, obviously. So we do the best we can with what we have. So go to spousal real quick, because that's something that I spent a lot of time on with clients. So a worker, basically how your PIA is calculated, and that is your highest 35 years of employment. So the way the Social Security system works is they're looking at your highest 35 years of employment, and that's the formula to use to run your PIA calculation, which is basically the amount of money you're going to get every month in Social Security years, your full retirement calculation. So if you have more than 35 years, it's taking your highest 35. So if you work for 50 years, it's going to look at your highest 35. Every year above is replacing. So I'll give you my personal example. I'm at 54. So every year past this, it's basically kicking out like in my 20s, right? It's taking out years that I didn't earn as much, maybe as a part-time job, maybe just getting out of college, maybe trying to find my career path. So it's getting rid of those smaller years, and it is adding to my number to make my benefit higher. So for spouses, in a lot of cases, and while spousal benefit exists, is because whether male or female, but maybe there were years that one spouse stayed home more than the other. Maybe the one was the primary breadwinner for the family, and while the other maybe stayed home a few years, raised children, or maybe stayed home even longer than that, took care of other things. So they have a lot of zeros built into their work life. So if we look at a couple, we could have one in the household that has 35 to 40 years of employment. We can have the other that only has 20. So if you only have 20, it's still going to calculate 35. So you got 15 years of zeros. It's going to take your benefit lower, right? So it's going to have some kind of, it's an average formula. So it's going to knock your benefit down every time you have a 0 year. Well, the way the government looked at that is, okay, that's not fair. I mean, if one spouse stayed home more than the other, I think they're also entitled to a benefit. So they came up with this formula to make this fair for spouses who didn't work as much as maybe the primary earner in the household, which makes a lot of sense. So the spouse can get 50% of the primary worker's Social Security benefit. Now, there's some caveats to this, and we'll talk about all of those. So the spouse can get 50%. In order for the spouse to claim that benefit, not their own benefit, but the spousal benefit, half of your partners are the highest earner, the primary worker has to have filed. Most people miss that. So I've had conversations like, well, I think let's use male, female, the wife. Chris, I think we want to go ahead and she filed for her benefit at 62. Well, he's only 63, 64, maybe even older, but he's not filing yet. She can't file for spousal. He has to first for her to get for the spousal side of the benefit. Okay. And if a spouse applies early to at 60, let's say 62, the benefit is reduced and it's reduced forever. There is no catch up on that. So it is reduced forever. No delayed credits either. So when we talked about a second ago, if you wait past full retirement age, 67, let's say you were going to file at 69, you can do that as a spousal benefit, but you don't get an additional 8% credit per year for a spousal benefit. It caps at full retirement age. So you might as well go ahead in most cases for spousal benefit, file at 67. But we can go through scenarios on that too for couples to explain that a little bit better. Maybe we'll show that in a minute as well. You can only receive a spousal benefit if it's greater than your own. So the rules have changed. There's used to that a spouse could get, it almost was like extra Social Security money. They could get almost both. You can't anymore. So you're only going to get either the higher of yours or half of your spouse's. Okay. And we'll definitely show that in some numbers so that makes the most sense. So you're not going to be able to say, I'm going to get my benefit and his benefit, or my benefit and her benefit. That's not a case anymore. That's no longer. So let's look at an example. And this is a simplistic one. So a very simple example. Jack's PIA, his primary insurance amount is $2,000 per month. Jill's is $800. Okay. If Jill, now half of Jack's is $1,000. So that's higher than Jill's. So technically, Jill's only going to, she's only going to get the 1,000. She's not going to get her 800 plus that 1,000. That's why I said you can't get both. She's only going to get the 1,000. So she's getting half of his or hers, whichever's higher. And in this case, half of his is higher than hers. Okay. So let's look at an example then where basically Jill's PIA is more than half of his. So in this case, Jack's is still $2,000. Jill's is $1,500 on her own benefit. So her spousal benefit would be $1,000, which $1,000 is less than $1,500. So Jill's is going to get hers. So she's not going to get half of Jack's. Why would she? Because that's $500 less than she can get on her own benefit. So when she claims, and we're talking about full retirement age again at 67, when she claims, she's going to get $1,500. Okay, so that's going to be what happens if the spouse's benefit is higher than half of the higher wage earner. Okay. All right. So what we talk about a lot with clients is how do we maximize? All right. So we got a couple. We got one that has a certain dollar figure based on their working years. We have another has a certain dollar figure based on their working years. And then we're trying to say, should we take spousal? Should they take their own? Should they take it at 62, 67, 70, or what's one of those numbers in between? And we'll run scenarios on them to basically pick out the best. So a rule of thumb, when the lower earning spouse's amount is more than 50% of the higher earning spouse's amount, both should delay till 70. That's a cookie cutter rule of thumb. If I ever get that in just a conversation at a restaurant, which never happens, but let's just say I'm having a conversation in a restaurant with someone, they say, hey, by the way, what should we do without running your fancy calculators? If this is the case, that the lower earning spouse's PIA, is more than 50% of the higher earned spouses, what would you recommend? I'm going to say both wait till 70, unless you 100% need the money because you got to pay expenses. You have no other way to do that, of course. Now, that will maximize the benefits over their life expectancy. Again, like I said a second ago, we don't know 100% what someone's life expectancy is. If you pass at 72, well, we won't know that till that happens. So sometimes when we talk about I'll have a conversation with a client about their family history, right? So I'll use mine as a primary example. Men in my family don't live to be very old. So when I look at this for me and my wife in making a decision when we're in our 60s, I may adjust from this based on, well, do I think I'm going to outlive what my traditional life expectancy is for men in my family? If I think I will, potentially, I may do this as an example, but maybe not. So it's an ongoing conversation until we make that final decision. I'm gonna give some examples. So let's look at John and Jane. They're 62 now. John is $3,600 in his monthly amount. Jane is 25 in hers, and of course we just put the life expectancies because we need those to run this scenario. So this is going to look really busy on this next slide. All right. So I usually run 3 to 5 scenarios for every client in our program just to test them. And what I'm looking for is what's the maximum potential amount of benefit that Social Security will pay a couple if they live to be those life expectancies. John's 88, Jane 96. I can change those variables. So in my case, I could say, okay, let's just my grandfather, my great grandfather, my uncle, my dad, those types of things. Let's just give an average life expectancy of 75. It's actually a little less than that, unfortunately. But let's say 75. I'll change my variable from 88 to 75. I'll maybe run Heather's, my wife, till 96 and just see. But I'm trying to figure out what's going to be the best for us if things worked out. So told you, very, very busy. And I'll put this on a graph in a second where it shows you a little bit better as far as not having to see all these numbers built in because this is a lot. I totally understand that. So lifetime maximum benefit number 5 is where I start. If everything works out, what would be the best option? And we said a second ago on that other slide, both wait till 70. Okay. There's going to be situations where someone says, Chris, we just don't have the income. We don't have the income coming to the household to replace our expenses or cover our expenses right now. We can't wait until 70. We're at 62, 63. We may do something earlier. That's fine. What I like to do is when we have those, we can play in these systems to show them what that looks like as far as their benefit going forward and make them more comfortable with that decision. So at least this gives them a good understanding of what to expect overall the remaining years. So if I graph this, which I think is more powerful than just looking at all those numbers, you will see if both wait until 70. Okay, maximum lifetime benefit. This is the most they can get out of the system. Everything goes well. They wait till they hit that age. They both file under those numbers. You're talking in roughly about $3.2 million. And I know people are sitting there right now going, I'm sorry, what'd you say? $3.2 million of potential lifetime benefit if they reach those life expectancy ages. That is a huge number. So most people will never. I've shared this without showing a slide, and they don't believe me. How is Social Security going to pay us $3 million to our household? Yeah, I mean this is real information coming from your own personal. And again, we'll get your Social Security statement to run this. Your personal PII that Social Security is calculated for you based on cost of living adjustments at an average. And it comes up to about that number if you both wait till that and you live to your life expectancy. So that will show you both filing early. That will show you both waiting until 70. And we can run any scenario in between in any type of situation. So when I have an interview with a couple, I'm trying to figure out what variables we need to worry about inside between 62 and 70 to factor in to make this decision the best possible decisions possible. And we can also run a break-even analysis. I know a lot of people say, well, how long will it take? Where do I need to live? What ages do I need to live to make sure that, or that if I file early, all of a sudden I'm behind? So you can see this graph. If somebody files early on the green line, about this age here in this year is when the other scenarios pass it. So if you have a shorter life expectancy, you win, if you want to call it that. You passed away early, so I don't say that's a winning, but it was the right decision to have filed early. If you out punch your coverage or live longer than your average ages, 100% doing either of these 2, 4, or 5 scenarios is definitely going to get more out of the system to you. Okay, so that's how we look at these as far as trying to figure out the best option. The other thing, and I just got off a phone call with a client with this one, it is, I think, very important to talk about the widow benefit. Okay, the widow benefit, which we'll go over a scenario on this in a second or some more explanation, is what your spouse, you're the higher earner. So if you were to pass away as the higher earner, let's use male female because men don't live as long as females. Let's say I pass away first. My Social Security is higher than Heather's, my potential payout. I want to leave her the most I possibly can. So in those scenarios I talked about, this is what, let's just say it's Heather and me instead of Jane and Jill, or John and Jane, or is it Jill? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's just say that it's Heather and me. Heather would get this if I die, in my 70s. If we both claimed early, she would get this if I die, if we waited, or I waited till 70. So I think that's almost a 40,000 jump in pay if when I pass away, if I wait until 70 to file. So I think it's very important to talk a lot about the widow benefit to make sure that whoever the remaining spouse is gets the maximum income they possibly can out of the system. Because once you pass away, if you're both filing, one of the one who, you're only going to get one. You don't get them both, remember. So you're going to lose a potential Social Security payment anyway, so you better get the maximum payment benefit that you possibly can from the other. All right, let's go through a couple other things on examples of maximization. So this is when the primary insurance amount for the spouse is less than 50% of the primary earner. Okay, so Mike is $3,600. Mary's is a lot less. So if Mary's is a lot less than Mike's, or in any case, whoever you are, what should I do? So we run the analysis to determine what is the best benefit possible for Mary and Mike if in this case. So the maximization is both claim early. You can see how much lower that number is than if they waited till later in life to file. Now, the difference between this one and the last one was both filed at 70, right? In this case, because hers is so much less than Mike's, the maximization is her filing at 67 and then Mike kicking his at 70, and then she can up to the spousal benefit also when as well at that time period. So, and that takes the place of her personal claim of 883. So we're jumping hers up at 70, which is the maximization to get the most benefit for them over their lifetime. And not to get too granular in this, it's essentially how can we get the most out of the system again, with also providing what you need as a couple. Again, if you have a need to pull more out early, by all means, that's what we're going to work towards to give you that advice. But a lot of times my clients will say, hey, Chris, I don't really need the money right now. Should I? And that's when we really go into this and say, okay, if you don't need it, how about and maybe your life expectancy is longer based on your genetics. How do we figure out how to get the most out of the system we possibly can to help you? And that's what we're working towards. So there's not really a cookie cutter answer, folks. It's essentially what can we do, or what can you do, and when should you do it to make sure that it's working for you. Of course, other factors to play: taxes. Are you still going to work in your 60s? Oh, there's so many variables that we need to consider and you need to consider. So just don't do this in a vacuum. I would spend time to analyze this before you push the button. Once you make a decision and you tell SSA that this is what you want to do, you're locking it. Now, you do have a time period. Now, I'm not going to go into that deep today, but you do have a time period that you can make an adjustment or a change to that once you make an election. But it's not like you can go 2 or 3 years down the road and go like, oh, this was a bad decision, I want to change it. That's not going to happen. Okay, so give it a little thought to it, and don't do it. I said in a vacuum. Don't do it in a vacuum. Just work with someone. And Social Security Administration website also, where you would pull your statements, they also have some calculators in there too. But if you're a client of ours, this is part of what we do for you, just letting you know that. All right, so I want to quickly hit on divorced, and I want to hit on widow. Okay, so for divorce, you're entitled. All right. So a lot of divorcees don't know this. They haven't been told this, or they forget this. Somehow this goes wrong. If you've been married 10 years, you're entitled to spousal benefits. You are. And as long as you do not get remarried. So let's a lot of, I work with a lot of single females who have gone through a divorce. So and they will not get remarried, especially if they're late 50s. They won't get remarried because they know they can get a spousal benefit off of if they don't have high benefits particularly either, but they can get a spousal benefit off of their ex husband or ex wife if it is a wife. You have to be 62 years old minimum to claim to file. He does the difference between this and your actual living spouse, the person you're actually married to, is in order to claim at 62, your spouse has to also file. Remember we said that for a divorce, that's not the case. So if you're 62 years old, you were married 10 years, you're not currently married, you're entitled to half. I'm going to use him half of his benefit as a spousal benefit. He does not have to file. You can go ahead and claim for yours. Okay. Now that's the 2-year rule. Below that, you have to be the divorce was more than 2 years ago. So if you just get divorced at 62, you can't file right away unless he does. But let's just say for now that you've been divorced 2 years. You're 62 years old. You're not married. You've been married for 10. You were married for 10 years to him. Then you're entitled to a benefit. People forget that. I can't tell how many divorcees I've talked to who go, "Oh, I didn't realize I could do that." Yes, you can, and then you can switch to your benefit later. Let your benefit stay on the stove for a while and cook, and you can take your spousal benefit off your ex, and then you can change to yours at a later point. You can do that. That's not a big deal. Um, the other thing with this too is that all the other rules for spousal, as far as is delayed and all that still applies to this because it's treated like a spousal benefit for divorcees, and multiple people can be on one. That's something people. I have had a situation where for he was a client, and it doesn't affect his Social Security benefit at all. But he had two exes that are getting a benefit, and his current wife's getting a benefit off of his. So you can have multiple people off of that. I know that's a crazy rule, but you can have multiple people that are off the same primary earner Social Security benefit can draw as a spousal or divorce spousal. So if you're divorced, pay attention to that. I mentioned about the widow benefit. They call it the survivor benefit. It used to be always called the widow benefit, but it's called survivor benefit. These are the rules to claim for that. The couple had to be married at least 9 months. Okay, so it's not as long as divorce, as long as you're married 9 months or so. One big difference, and I've just heard this one recently with someone who didn't know the rule. 60, it's not 62. So for survivor, as long as when you hit 60, you can take reduced benefit, just like 62 is a reduced benefit, but you can take at 60 a reduced benefit if you need to. The longer, the better, but wait if you can. But you can't claim it 60 and not 62 for survivor benefit or widow benefit. Okay, so as long as you don't get remarried before age 60, after 60, and I've had this happen twice in the last 2 years. Someone waited until after they turned 60 and got married. They were both engaged for a couple of years. Somebody was smart enough to let them know, "Hey, you're 59. Wait another year. Claim survivor benefit off your widow, your husband who passed away, and then marry. And you can still collect this, by the way." And that's why they did. And there's a rule for divorcees too. If you're a divorce spouse survivor, you can still collect also. So, and then you can collect at the 60 number instead of the 62. So that still applies. So divorcees can still actually claim a benefit if your ex passes away. So that's happened also in the last couple of years. So quick on widow benefit, and you can switch back and forth. That's one of the biggest things I try to talk to folks about with widow is you may want to how you switch. So Julie John were married or are married, both at full retirement age. Joe's 2,000, Julie's 1,200 a month. Joe passes. At that point, Julie tells Social Security, and her $1,200 benefits are replaced by his too. So as soon as his benefits higher, he passes away, she gets to up hers to his. Had he waited, as this asterisk tells us, or that if he'd have waited till 70, hers would even be more than that, which is why I try to encourage people, particularly the higher earner Joe, if y'all need a little extra income, take Julie's and then hold on to his and wait till 70, and then let him, then he takes his, and then she could take a bump in hers too, and her widow benefit increases. So keep that in mind always. When eligible for both, this is called sequencing. When eligible for both, okay, your own retirement benefit and a survivor benefit, so you qualify for Social Security over your working years, and also you can get a widow benefit, survivor benefit from your spouse who passed away. Start with the one benefit, switch to the other by taking the higher benefit last. So what you want to do, and I'll show you the numbers on this, and this is one of the last things we'll go over. If your survivor benefit is higher, okay, start retirement benefit at 62 and switch to survivor benefit at full retirement age. So if your widow benefit is higher than what yours is, take yours at 62 early and switch. If your retirement benefit, if your personal benefit is higher, you can take the survivor benefit not at 62 but 60. Go ahead and take that and switch to the benefit at 70. Now, some of these numbers change if you're already in your 63, 64, 65 years, those time periods. But let's just say hypothetically that you're about the 60-year-old currently. These are the rules of thumb, and these change to make sure that works in your benefit. So Wanda has a very low personal benefit. Her deceased husband has a very, well, in this case, much, much higher than hers. So what we want to do, what's going to work best for them to maximize the benefit, you can see the difference in numbers. Wanda is going to take hers, okay, at 62. So she's going to go ahead and take her benefit at 62 since it's so much less than his benefit. She's going to let his sit until 67 to get the full number, and it gets a cost of living adjustment increase, of course, over time. The maximum benefit to her, if she worked this math, or we helped her work this math, is almost $300,000 different than the other. So we're talking real numbers making these decisions. They're actually, we're not saying you can look on a monthly basis and go, well, it's only, it's not that much different per month. But when we take that over all those years, as well as the cost of living or COLA increase, it can be a huge number if you reach your full life expectancy, particularly. So the thing I want people to think about, here's the questions you should have as you get closer to Social Security age. You should want to know, when should you apply? What if I want to keep working? How does that impact my Social Security benefit if I want to still work in my early 60s through full retirement age, 67? What if I've already applied? I already mentioned there, if you've just applied recently, there may be some changes to that you can make through the Social Security Administration. You can pay back. We can talk about that if you've already applied this year and you want to figure out. If you applied 2-3 years ago, kind of stuck. But if you applied this year and you want to make some adjustments to that, there may be some things to do to fix it. How much will my benefit be? I'm going to tell every client, get your Social Security statement. Make sure you've applied at SSA.gov for your own account. And I want to see everybody's Social Security statement as a client of mine annually. Let's see how to adjust every year. And we'll rerun these numbers on an ongoing basis for them until they actually make the decision to file. How can I coordinate spousal benefits? That goes back to the math. Some of this is a math formula as well as a few other things. Variables. So what's the best long-term strategy for my situation? Again, it's not cookie cutter. It's basically what works best for you and your family. And then if you don't need the money, what I'm going to talk about, how do we maximize? What do we need to do for you in your case, whether you're widow, divorce, or a couple? What do we need to do to make sure you get the most money out of this you possibly can? And what do I do next? So those are the conversations we have with clients. These are the things I think you should think about as you're going into filing for Social Security. It's a stigma. It has its issues. It has, it has its problems, and it could have some future problems. 67 for me may turn into 70. They may change full retirement age by the time I get close to that to 70. Who knows? There's going to be variables in that. But this is real money. This can help. Obviously, when we're talking about big dollars, I mentioned that $3 million potential. So we just need to make sure we plan for it correctly and how that can benefit you in your retirement years. If you are much younger, let's say you're younger than 50 at this point, even though those of us in our 50s, the variables can change, at least the system can change the rules. But if you're younger than if you're younger than 50, or you're talking to your kids who are in their 20s and 30s, the biggest thing I can tell you to do, and I've said, you've probably heard me say this before, tell them to prepare that Social Security may not be what it is today for some of us. Okay, so make sure they understand and that you're coaching them to save for themselves, do participate in their retirement plans at work, put some money aside, be smart with their money, because I would want to rely on this a little bit when I'm in my 60s and 70s and 80s. But I've also been smart enough to also put money to the side just in case. So I hope this helps with answering some questions, or if not answering questions, maybe causing you to have questions. That is awesome. If this has helped you formulate some questions that you need to get answers to, call us. Reach out to anybody on Highland Trust team, and we'll schedule a meeting with you and go through to make sure that you're making the best decisions again for you and your family. So I will stop with that. I hope everybody has a good remainder of their day, and I look forward to getting some feedback or questions from you going forward. Thank you, and hope all's good.